Commander Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the deck of Zenith Prime. The orbital station stretched out before him like a small city floating in space. Lights from 1,000 different sources glowed in colors he had never seen on Earth. The air smelled strange, filled with scents from dozens of alien species, all gathering in one place. Jake adjusted his uniform and walked forward. Beside him, Dr. Claire Holland carried a small bag and her worn leather notebook. She looked around with quiet interest, her eyes taking in every detail of the alien station. They had traveled 3 months to reach this place, and now humanity's future in the Galactic Coalition would be decided here. The station buzzed with activity. Alien beings of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, while others slithered, floated, or skittered on multiple limbs. Jake had studied the major species before coming here, but seeing them in person was different. They were impressive. They were powerful, and they clearly did not think much of humans. A massive reptilian creature blocked their path. It stood over 8 feet tall, with scales that looked like natural armor plating. Its eyes glowed yellow as it looked down at Jake and Claire. This was a Krill warrior, one of the most feared fighters in the galaxy. "The humans have arrived," the Krill said in a deep, rumbling voice. Its translator device made the words understandable, but the tone carried pure contempt. "How disappointing. I expected you to be taller." Other aliens nearby stopped to watch. A few made sounds that Jake's translator identified as laughter. He kept his face calm and nodded politely to the Krill warrior. "I am Commander Jake Morrison, representing Earth," he said. "This is Dr. Claire Holland, our strategic analyst." The Krill looked at Claire with particular amusement. She stood barely over 5 feet tall, thin and pale compared to the massive warrior. She met the alien's gaze without fear, but said nothing. Her hand rested on her notebook. "A strategic analyst," the Krill repeated. "How quaint. We Krill have no need for such things. Our strength speaks for itself." The warrior flexed one arm, showing muscles that could easily crush a human skull. "But I forget myself. I am Battlemaster Zarno K, champion of the Krill and victor of the last 3 trials. Tell me, little humans, what strength do you bring to the coalition?" Jake started to respond, but another alien interrupted. This one had 4 arms and skin that shifted colors like oil on water. A Gorath warrior, equally dangerous in combat. "They bring nothing," the Gorath said. "Look at them. No claws, no armor, no venom. Their bodies are soft and weak. They live barely 100 years and call it a full lifespan. Why did the Coalition even accept such fragile creatures?" More aliens gathered around. Jake recognized the insectoid Vex's Thar, whose hive mind made them formidable opponents. He saw delegates from a dozen other species, all watching the humans with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "The humans passed the basic requirements," a new voice said. This came from one of the Coalition administrators, a floating creature that spoke through bursts of light. "They have achieved faster than light travel and demonstrated basic civilization. They are permitted to attend the trials." "Permitted to attend," Zarno K said with a laugh, "but not permitted to compete with real warriors. These trials will prove what we already know. Humanity is unworthy of a voice in Coalition matters." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his composure. Claire's hand touched his arm briefly, a silent message to stay calm. She pulled out her notebook and began writing something down. Several aliens noticed and made sounds of disbelief. "What is that primitive device?" "One of," the Vexthar asked, its compound eyes focusing on Claire's notebook. "A notebook," Claire said quietly, "for recording observations." The Vexthar's antennae quivered with what might have been amusement. "You use physical writing? How backward. Our neural interfaces process information 1,000 times faster than your clumsy handwriting." Claire simply nodded and continued writing. Jake could see her recording details about each species, noting their behaviors and reactions. She had been doing this since they arrived, filling page after page with neat handwriting. A loud tone echoed through the station. All conversations stopped as a holographic projection appeared in the center of the gathering area. An ancient being, one of the coalition elders, materialized in the light. "Welcome, delegates of the coalition," the elder's voice resonated through everyone's translator. "The trials of strength will begin tomorrow. Each species will demonstrate their military prowess through a series of challenges: combat skill, strategic warfare, survival ability, and tactical thinking will all be tested." The elder's image turned slowly, seeming to look at each delegation in turn. "The results of these trials will determine resource allocation, political influence, and standing within the coalition for the next decade. Glory awaits the victors. Shame awaits the failures." The hologram faded. Immediately, the alien delegates began talking among themselves, discussing strategy and boasting about their chances. The Krill warriors beat their chests and roared. The Gorath performed ritual combat dances. The Vexthar hummed in their unified high voice. Jake looked at Claire. "What do you think our chances are?" She closed her notebook and looked up at him with calm eyes. "In direct combat? Almost zero. We cannot match their strength or speed." "That's honest," Jake said with a slight smile. "So why do you look so calm?" "Because the trials test more than just combat," Claire said. "And I have been watching these species very carefully. They are strong, yes, but strong is not the same as smart." Zarnoke overheard this and laughed loudly. "Did the little human just call us stupid? How brave! Tomorrow, when your warriors fall in the first challenge, we will see who is truly intelligent." Other aliens joined in the laughter. Jake felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger, but Claire remained perfectly calm. She opened her notebook again and wrote something down. Jake could see she was documenting Zarnoke's words and behavior. "Come on," Claire said to Jake. "Let us get settled. We have a lot of work to do tonight." As they walked away from the crowd, Jake could still hear the aliens mocking them. The Krill called humans soft. The Gorath called them weak. The Vexthar called them primitive. Every insult stung because Jake knew there was truth in them. Humans were physically inferior to almost every species here. They reached their assigned quarters, a small room with basic furniture. Claire immediately sat down and began organizing her notes. Jake watched her work, wondering what she was planning. "You really think we have a chance?" he asked. Claire looked up at him. "Jake, do you know how humans survived on Earth? We were not the strongest animals. Lions were stronger. Bears were bigger. Wolves hunted in better packs. But humans survived and thrived because we learned. We observed. We adapted. We used our minds instead of just our muscles." She tapped her notebook. "Every species here has shown me something about tea." The first challenge began at dawn. Station time. Thousands of alien spectators filled the observation decks around the massive simulation arena. The arena itself could create any environment, any battlefield, any condition imaginable through advanced holographic technology and force fields. Jake stood in the preparation area with 5 other human fighters. They were all military veterans, trained in multiple combat styles, equipped with the best weapons Earth could provide. But as they watched the other species prepare, doubt crept into their hearts. The Krill warriors looked like walking tanks. Their natural armor could deflect most energy weapons. Their claws could tear through steel. One Krill warrior was warming up by punching through solid metal plates as if they were paper. "First challenge is direct combat," announced the arena master. "One-on-one matches. Victory by submission or incapacitation. Lethal force is prohibited." Jake's name was called first. His opponent was a young Krill warrior, probably the smallest of their delegation, but still nearly 7 feet tall and built like a mountain. In the observation deck, Claire sat with her notebook open. She was the only human not watching with visible anxiety. Her pen moved steadily across the page as she recorded everything. The match began. Jake moved fast, using his agility to stay away from the Krill's powerful arms. He struck at weak points, joints, and soft tissue areas he had studied. His attacks landed cleanly, but they seemed to have no effect. The krill's scales were too thick. The krill warrior grew tired of the chase. With surprising speed, it lunged forward and caught Jake with one massive hand. Jake felt his ribs creak under the pressure. He tried to break free, using every technique he knew, but it was useless. The strength difference was too great. Within 3 minutes, Jake was forced to submit. The medics rushed in to check him for injuries. He had 2 cracked ribs and multiple bruises. The krill warrior had barely broken a sweat. The other human fighters did not fare much better. One lost to a Gorath in less than a minute. Another managed to last 5 minutes against a Vexisthar warrior before being overwhelmed. Each defeat was met with jeers and mocking laughter from the alien spectators. By the end of the combat challenge, humanity had not won a single match. They ranked dead last among all species. In the observation deck, several alien delegates were already calling for humanity to be expelled from the coalition. "This is embarrassing," one alien official said loudly. "They cannot even defend themselves in basic combat. How can such weak creatures deserve a voice in our councils?" Zarnoke stood and addressed the crowd. "I propose we end this farce now. Humanity has proven they are unworthy. We should strip them of membership and send them back to their little world." Several species voiced their agreement. The human delegation looked devastated. Their mission was falling apart before it had truly begun, but Claire kept writing in her notebook. She had filled 10 pages with observations from the combat matches. Notes about reaction times, preferred attack angles, recovery speeds, even the psychological responses of different species to victory and defeat. While everyone else saw only human failure, she saw data. Jake limped over to her, his ribs wrapped in medical gel. "This is bad, Claire. Really bad. Sit down," she said quietly. "Tell me what you felt during the fight." "What I felt?" Jake stared at her. "I felt completely outmatched. The krill's strength is incredible. There was nothing I could do." "But you lasted 3 minutes," Claire said. "The Gorath match ended in 1 minute. Why?" Jake thought about it. "I used mobility, stayed away from his grabs. The human who fought the Gorath tried to match strength directly." "Exactly." Claire made a note. "Each species has different combat psychology. The krill rely on their natural advantages, but get frustrated by evasion. The Gorath seek honorable direct confrontation and overwhelm opponents who accept that challenge." She showed Jake her notes. Pages filled with detailed observations about each species' fighting style. Their strengths, but also their patterns and limitations. "Claire, this is interesting, but we just lost every single combat match," Jake said. "The coalition is talking about kicking us out." "The trials have 5 challenges," Claire replied calmly. "We have lost one. There are 4 more, and not all of them favor pure physical strength." The second challenge was announced that afternoon. Fleet Battle Simulation. Each species would command a small fleet in a tactical space battle scenario. This was closer to human experience, and Jake felt more confident. The human team used coordinated tactics, clever positioning, and efficient resource management. They performed much better than in combat. But the Vexthar hive mind allowed perfect coordination across their entire fleet with 0 communication delay. The krill's aggressive assault tactics overwhelmed the defensive positions. The Gorath's honor-bound formations proved surprisingly effective. Humanity placed 7th out of 12 species, better than last, but still not impressive. The calls for their expulsion grew louder. That evening, Jake found Claire in their quarters, surrounded by papers covered in diagrams and notes. She had been working non-stop since the fleet battle ended. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Building profiles," she said without looking up. "Every species has patterns. The krill always favor aggressive opening moves. The Vexisthar take approximately 1.3 seconds to process tactical changes across their hive mind. The Gorath refuse to use certain tactics because they consider them dishonorable." She pulled out a fresh page. "I have been studying the trial's history too. The data files are public. For the past 50 years, the same 3 species have dominated, always using the same basic strategies. Do you know why? Because those strategies work? Jake guessed. Because no one ever tries anything different, Claire said. These species are powerful, yes, but they are also predictable. They rely on their natural advantages and traditional tactics. They do not adapt because they have never needed to. She looked at Jake with intense focus. Humans are different. On Earth, we survived not by being strongest or fastest, but by being most adaptable. We learned from every challenge. We changed our tactics. We thought creatively. So you have a plan, Jake said. I have the beginning of one, Claire admitted. The next 3 challenges are different from the first 2. They test strategy, resource management, and creative problem-solving more than raw power. That is where we can compete. Jake sat down beside her. The coalition will not give us much more time. If we fail the next challenge, they might vote to expel us before we even finish the trials. Then we cannot fail, Claire said simply. She handed him a thick stack of papers. Read these. I need you to understand each species' psychology and tactical preferences perfectly. Tomorrow's challenge is planetary siege. We are going to do something none of these species will expect. Jake took the papers and started reading. Claire's handwriting covered every page, detailing observations, patterns, hypotheses, and strategies. It was incredibly thorough work, all done with just a notebook and careful attention. As he read, Jake began to understand what Claire was planning. It was risky. It went against conventional military doctrine. The other species would probably call it cowardice or trickery, but it might actually work. In the main hall of Zenith Prime, the alien delegates were celebrating their victories and mocking humanity's defeats. Zarnoke raised a drink and proclaimed loudly, "To the weak humans, who thought they could compete with true warriors, may they learn their place quickly and save us all further embarrassment." The crowd laughed and cheered. They were so confident in their superiority, so certain that physical strength determined everything. None of them knew that in a small room, a human woman with a simple notebook was carefully dismantling every assumption they held. She was studying them with the same intense focus that human scientists had once used to understand the natural world. Every behavior was data. Every pattern was a weakness. Every tradition was a predictability to exploit. Claire worked through the night, filling more pages. Her hand cramped from writing, but she did not stop. She was doing what humans had always done best. She was learning. Jake woke up before dawn to find Claire still awake, reviewing her notes one final time. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked. The arena transformed before their eyes. Mountains rose from the floor, rivers carved through valleys, and a massive fortress materialized on the highest peak. The third challenge was planetary siege. Each team had to conquer the fortress while managing limited resources and defending against AI-controlled defense systems. The rules were simple. Teams started at designated locations far from the fortress. They had basic supplies and equipment. The fortress had advanced weapons, shields, and automated defenses. The team that captured the fortress most efficiently would win. Efficiency was measured by time, resources used, and casualties taken. Most species immediately began planning their assault routes. The Krill gathered their warriors for a direct charge. The Gorath studied the fortress walls, looking for honorable points of attack. The Vexthar split into swarm groups to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. Jake stood with his human team, waiting for Claire's instructions. She had spent the morning briefing them on her strategy, and they all understood their roles. Several of them looked uncertain, but they trusted her. "Remember," Claire said quietly to the group, "do exactly as we planned. Do not deviate no matter what the other species do." The challenge began. Immediately, the Krill charged forward with their characteristic aggression. They moved fast, smashing through obstacles in their path. Energy weapons blazed as they engaged the fortress defenses. It was an impressive display of power and courage. The Gorath took a different approach, using siege tactics passed down through their military traditions. They built assault ramps and prepared coordinated attacks on the fortress gates. The Vexthar swarmed like insects, overwhelming sections of the defense grid through sheer numbers. The human team did none of these things. Instead, they moved away from the fortress. They found a defensible position in a narrow valley, set up a small camp, and began fortifying it. To the watching aliens, it looked like the humans were running away. Laughter erupted from the observation decks. "The humans are hiding," someone shouted. "They are too afraid to even attempt the challenge." Zarnoke watched with satisfaction. "This proves everything. They have no warrior spirit. They retreat before the battle even begins." But Claire sat in the observation deck, her notebook open, watching the arena displays with calm attention. She was tracking multiple data streams at once: resource consumption, casualty rates, time elapsed, and most importantly, the behavior patterns of each species. The krill reached the fortress first. Their warriors threw themselves against the walls with incredible ferocity. The automated defenses fired constantly, cutting down krill soldiers. More warriors charged forward to replace the fallen. It was brutal and costly, but they were making progress. The Gorath siege equipment reached the walls. They began a methodical assault, using their 4 arms to operate complex machinery. Their approach was more efficient than the krill's, but still expensive in both time and resources. The Vexthar swarms managed to breach one section of the outer wall, but the fortress's inner defenses activated, creating a killing zone. Hundreds of Vexthar fell before they pulled back to regroup. Meanwhile, the human team continued their seemingly cowardly strategy. They had built a solid defensive perimeter and were actually constructing supply lines back to their starting point. Some team members were hunting for food in the simulated environment. Others were setting up water collection systems. "What are they doing?" an alien observer asked, genuinely confused. Claire made a note in her notebook but said nothing. Jake could see her tracking the resource expenditure of each species. The krill had already used 60% of their starting resources. The Gorath were at 45%. The Vexthar, despite their efficiency, were at 50% due to heavy casualties. Humans had used less than 10% of their resources and had taken 0 casualties. Hours passed. The krill finally breached the fortress's outer defenses through sheer persistence and sacrifice. They had lost over half their force, but the survivors pressed on toward the central keep. Zarnoke roared in triumph from the observation deck. The Gorath were close behind, having methodically dismantled the fortress defenses section by section. Their casualties were lower than the krill's, but they had exhausted most of their heavy equipment. The Vexthar changed tactics multiple times, their hive mind analyzing and adapting. But each new approach cost them more soldiers and resources. The human team was now fishing in a nearby stream and had started a small farm plot. To everyone watching, it looked absurd. "This is pathetic," one alien delegate said. "They have given up entirely." But Claire smiled slightly as she wrote in her notebook. Her calculations were working out exactly as predicted. More hours passed. The krill finally captured the fortress's central keep, planting their banner with a victorious roar. They had completed the challenge, but the cost was enormous. 90% of their resources were gone. Casualty rates were catastrophic. Their time was good, but their efficiency rating was terrible. The Gorath finished next, with better resource management but slower time. The Vexthar came in third, having adapted their strategy multiple times but paying the price in casualties each time. Several smaller species attempted the challenge with mixed results. Some gave up entirely after seeing the brutal defenses. Night fell in the simulation. The fortress reset for the next team. Only humans remained to attempt the challenge. The observation decks were still full, but now the aliens were watching out of curiosity rather than respect. What would the cowardly humans try now? Jake received the signal from Claire. The human team packed up their camp efficiently. They moved toward the fortress, but not in a direct assault. Instead, they positioned themselves at a safe distance and simply waited. "What is this?" Zarnoke demanded. "They are doing nothing." Claire stood up in the observation deck. She spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We are waiting for the fortress defenses to power down." Confused silence filled the deck. An alien official checked the rules. The fortress defenses run on a 24-hour power cycle. After a full day of continuous operation, they must recharge for 1 hour. Correct, Claire said. She had found this detail buried deep in the challenge specifications. Every other species had ignored it, assuming they needed to overcome the defenses through force. Understanding dawned on the aliens' faces. The humans had waited for the defenses to exhaust themselves. It was not cowardice. It was patience. When the fortress's shields flickered and died for their recharge cycle, the human team moved in. They entered through the main gate, which was now undefended. They walked through corridors that had run out of ammunition. They reached the central keep and planted their flag. Total time, 26 hours. Resource usage, 12%. Casualties, 0. Their efficiency rating was the highest any species had ever achieved in the trial's history. Shocked silence filled the observation decks. Then arguments erupted. Some aliens called it cheating. Others called it cowardice. But the rules were clear. The challenge was to capture the fortress most efficiently. And the humans had done exactly that. Zarn OK stormed down to confront Claire directly. His massive form towered over her, radiating anger. This is not how warriors compete. You did not fight. You hid and waited like prey animals. Claire looked up at him calmly. The challenge was not to fight bravely. It was to capture the fortress efficiently. We succeeded. Your warriors died by the hundreds because you valued glory over intelligence. We value honor, Zarnoke snarled. We face challenges head-on. We do not cower and exploit technicalities. And that is why we won, Claire said simply. She opened her notebook and showed him pages of calculations. I tracked your resource usage, your casualty rates, your decision patterns. You followed the same aggressive strategy your people have used for generations. You never considered alternatives because you never had to think. Your strength has made you predictable. Trand, she turned to address all the aliens who had gathered. Every species here relied on their natural advantages. The Krill used overwhelming force. The Gorath used traditional siege tactics. The Vexar used swarm numbers. All of you did what you always do. But none of you truly analyzed the challenge. You saw a fortress and assumed you had to destroy it. Jake stepped forward to support her. Humans do not have natural weapons or armor. We cannot match your strength or speed, but we survived on Earth by thinking differently, by finding solutions that others missed. That is our advantage. The coalition judges reviewed the results. By every measurable metric, the humans had achieved the best outcome. After lengthy debate, they officially awarded second place to humanity in the third challenge. The Krill, despite finishing first in time, ranked lower due to their enormous resource waste and casualties. The rankings shifted. Humanity was no longer in last place overall. The calls for their expulsion stopped, as delegates began to realize these weak creatures might have abilities worth respecting. That evening, Claire sat alone in the observation area, reviewing her notes from the day. She had proven her theories correct, but this was just the beginning. 3 challenges remained, and she knew the other species would adapt now that they understood the humans were a real threat. Jake found her there. You did it. Everyone is talking about your strategy. We did it, Claire corrected. And we showed only one type of human thinking. We still have 2 more challenges to win convincingly. The 4th challenge is survival in a hostile environment. That will be our real test. She turned to a fresh page in her notebook. Now the other species will study us the way I studied them. They will try to predict our strategies. So we need to be even more creative. The arena became a nightmare landscape. Poisonous swamps stretched for miles, filled with simulated predators and toxic gases. Volcanic vents spewed heat and ash. The temperature swung wildly between freezing cold and scorching heat every few hours. Violent storms rolled across the terrain without warning. Each team appeared at different starting locations with identical supply packs, basic tools, water for 1 day, food for 2 days, medical supplies, and 1 communication device. 5 objectives were scattered across the hostile environment. Teams earned points for each objective completed and for surviving the full 72 hours. Claire had spent the previous night studying the environmental data and each species' biological needs. She knew the krill needed high temperatures to maintain peak performance. She knew the Vexthar were vulnerable to certain sound frequencies that disrupted their hive-mind communication. She knew the Gorath had highly territorial instincts that could be exploited. The challenge began at sunrise. The krill immediately charged toward the nearest objective, using their natural resistance to heat to cross a field of volcanic vents. The Gorath formed tight defensive formations and moved cautiously through dangerous terrain. The Vexthar spread out in search patterns, using their numbers to cover more ground quickly. The human team gathered around Jake and Claire. She pulled out her notebook and showed them a detailed map she had created from the environmental data. "We are not going for the objectives first," she said. "We are going to prepare the environment to work for us instead of against us." She divided the team into pairs. Each pair had specific tasks. Some would set up sheltered camps at strategic locations. Others would create simple traps and warning systems. 2 team members with engineering backgrounds started building basic tools from materials in the environment. "The other species will rush to complete objectives," Claire explained. "They will exhaust themselves fighting the environment and each other. We will take our time, establish safe zones, and let them tire themselves out." One team member looked worried. "But we will fall behind in points." "Falling behind early does not matter if we finish strong," Claire said. "Trust the plan." Hours passed. The krill reached the first objective, a data collection point inside a cave system. But the cave was filled with toxic gases that even their tough bodies struggled against. They completed the objective but emerged weakened and coughing. The Gorath reached the second objective, an equipment cache on a mountain peak. The climb was treacherous, and several Gorath fell, injuring themselves on the rocks. They secured the objective, but had to use precious medical supplies to treat their wounded. The Vexthar split their forces to reach multiple objectives simultaneously. This worked initially, but when a sudden electrical storm struck, it disrupted their hive-mind communication. Separated groups panicked without coordination, and several were lost to environmental hazards. Meanwhile, the humans were building infrastructure. They created rainwater collection systems to extend their water supply. They identified edible plants in the simulation and started gathering food. They found natural shelters and improved them with simple engineering. By the end of the first day, other species had collected more objective points, but they were exhausted and running low on supplies. The humans had completed only one objective, but were well fed, rested, and had established 3 secure camps across the terrain. Claire sat by a fire in their main camp, writing in her notebook by the flickering light. She was documenting every team's movements, tracking their supply usage, and noting the environmental patterns. Jake sat beside her. "The other teams are ahead on points. For now," Claire said, "but look at their condition." She showed him tracking data on her notebook. "The krill are struggling with the cold cycles. The Vexthar are down to 60% strength after losing coordination in the storm. The Gorath are rationing their last food supplies." She pointed to the map. "Tomorrow, a major storm will hit the eastern region. All the remaining objectives are in that area. The other teams will push through the storm to get those points. We will wait until it passes, then move in when conditions are safer." "What if they complete all the objectives before the storm ends?" Jake asked. "Then we still win," Claire said confidently. "Because survival is worth as many points as the objectives. If we are the only team to finish in good condition, we score higher overall." The second day brought the predicted storm. Wind howled across the wasteland, carrying stinging sand and debris. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The temperature plunged. The krill tried to push through it anyway. Their leader refused to show weakness by waiting. They made progress but suffered badly from the cold and the battering winds. Several warriors collapsed from exposure. The Gorath also advanced, their honor code demanding they face challenges directly. They linked arms to avoid being separated, and fought through the storm step by painful step. The Vexthar attempted to use their numbers to create living shields, but the storm scattered them again. Without coordination, they became confused and disorganized. The human team stayed in their sheltered camps. They had built windbreaks and insulated shelters. They kept warm with carefully managed fires and rationed food. While the storm raged outside, they rested and maintained their equipment. Claire used this time to brief the team on the next phase. She showed them her observations about the other species' weaknesses. "When the storm clears, we move fast," she said. "The other teams will be exhausted and scattered. We use guerrilla tactics. We create diversions. We make them think we are everywhere at once." "You want us to fight them?" one team member asked. "No," Claire said. "I want us to outthink them. We do not need to fight if we can make them waste energy fighting ghosts." The storm cleared on the morning of the third day. The human team emerged from their camps refreshed and ready. They moved toward the remaining objectives with purpose and energy. They found the krill team struggling near the third objective. The cold had weakened them severely. Claire had the humans set up audio devices that created echoing sounds through the rocky terrain. The krill, already exhausted and disoriented, heard the sounds and thought they were being surrounded. They wasted energy investigating phantom threats. The Gorath were near the fourth objective, but Claire had studied their territorial instincts. The human team created false trail markers that made it look like another team had claimed the area. The Gorath's honor code required them to challenge this claim properly, wasting time on ritual combat preparations against an enemy that did not exist. For the Vexthar, Claire used their communication weakness. The human team had simple radio equipment. They broadcast random noise on frequencies similar to Vexthar communications. The hive mind became confused, unable to distinguish real signals from interference. While the other species chased shadows and fought confusion, the human team calmly collected the remaining objectives. They used the environment itself as a weapon, just as humans had always done on Earth. By the end of day 3, the results were clear. The human team had completed 4 of 5 objectives and survived in excellent condition. The krill had completed 3 objectives but lost 40% of their team to environmental casualties. The Gorath completed 3 objectives with heavy injuries. The Vexthar completed 2 objectives but were scattered and disorganized. When the final scores were calculated, humanity won the 4th challenge by a significant margin. Not through strength or speed, but through preparation, patience, and psychological warfare. The observation decks erupted in shocked conversation. The species that had mocked humanity just days ago now watched with respect and fear. The small, weak humans had defeated everyone using nothing but cleverness and a deep understanding of their opponents. Zarnoke stood motionless, staring at the final scores. His warriors had been outmatched in every way that mattered. Not in combat, but in thinking. He looked down at Claire, who sat calmly in the observation area. Writing in her notebook as always, she felt his gaze and looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. Zarnoke saw no triumph or arrogance in her expression. Just calm focus. She had defeated him again, and this time there could be no excuses. She had simply been smarter. The coalition officials announced that one challenge remained. The Grand Melee would take place in 2 days. It would be the largest and most complex challenge, combining all previous elements. The winner would determine the final rankings and the distribution of coalition resources and influence for the next decade. That evening, Claire called Jake to their quarters. She had covered the floor with pages from her notebook, creating a massive display of information about every species in the trials. "The Grand Melee is different," she said. "It allows alliances. Teams can work together." Jake looked at the information spread before him. "You want to form alliances? I want to change how the entire coalition thinks," Claire said. She pointed to data on 3 smaller species: the Quelori, the Paxion, and the Sharath. These species have never performed well in the trials because they are not warriors, but they have other strengths. The Quelori are brilliant scientists. The Paxion are master traders and logisticians. The Sharath are expert diplomats. She pulled out fresh pages showing alliance projections. "If we combine our strengths, we create something more powerful than any single species. The warrior races have always dominated through individual might. We will show them that cooperation is stronger." "Will they agree to work with us?" Jake asked. "They will if we offer them something the warrior races never have," Claire said. Respect. Equal partnership. A real chance to prove their worth. She smiled and tapped her notebook. I have been watching these species too. I know what they value. I know what they need. And I know exactly how to convince them. Jake looked at the complex web of alliances and strategies Claire had planned. This is ambitious. This is necessary, Claire said. The trials are not just about winning. They are about showing the galaxy what humanity represents. We can be a force that brings species together, instead of forcing them apart, through strength. She began gathering her pages, organizing them carefully. Tomorrow we make our proposals to the other species. The day after, we change everything. Claire stood before the Quilori delegation in their quarters. The Quilori were small, gray-skinned beings with large eyes adapted for scientific observation. They had ranked near the bottom in every trial challenge. Dismissed by the warrior races as too weak to matter. We want to propose an alliance for the Grand Melee, Claire said, opening her notebook to show them detailed plans. We believe that combining our analytical abilities with your scientific expertise would create a powerful partnership. The Quilori leader, a scientist named Vixen, examined the plans with obvious skepticism. Why would you ally with us? We have proven ourselves poor warriors. You have shown surprising strategic ability. You would do better alone or allied with stronger species. Strength is not just about fighting, Claire said. She showed Vixen pages of observations about Quilori capabilities. Your people have the best sensor technology in the coalition. Your scientific method is flawless. In a complex scenario like the Grand Melee, information and analysis are more valuable than muscle. She met Vixen's large eyes directly. The warrior races have never offered you true partnership. They have always treated you as inferior. We are offering you equality and respect. Together, we can prove that intelligence matters more than strength. Vixen studied Claire for a long moment. You have been observing us. I have been observing everyone, Claire said, gesturing to her notebook. It is what humans do. We learn. We adapt. And we recognize value where others see only weakness. After careful consideration, the Quilori agreed to the alliance. They were tired of being dismissed by the warrior races, and Claire's genuine respect for their abilities was something they had never experienced in the coalition. The Paxion were next. They were a merchant species, excellent at resource management and logistics, but poor at direct combat. Claire found them in their trading quarters, surrounded by supplies and equipment. We have a proposal, Claire said to their trade leader, Morax. An alliance that benefits all of us. She showed them projections of resource flows and supply chains during the Grand Melee. The warrior races will fight each other immediately, exhausting their resources. We propose a different strategy. We control key resource points and create supply networks. You handle the logistics. We provide the strategic planning and protection. Morax was a practical being. He reviewed Claire's numbers and saw the logic immediately. This could work. But what do we get from this partnership? Recognition, Claire said simply. For too long, the trials have been dominated by species who value combat over commerce. We will show the coalition that logistics and trade are essential to victory. You will get voting influence and respect. The Paxion agreed. The potential for profit and recognition was too valuable to ignore. The Sheriff were the most difficult. They were a diplomatic species, skilled in negotiation and peacekeeping, but considered irrelevant in military trials. Their ambassador, Talis, listened to Claire's proposal with polite doubt. This alliance of weaker species is creative, Talis said carefully, but the warrior races will crush us if we band together. They have done so before. Claire smiled and opened her notebook to a section filled with psychological profiles. They will try. But I have been studying the warrior races for days. I know how they think. I know how they will react. And I know how to make them defeat themselves. She showed Talis detailed predictions of how the Krill, Gorath, and Vexthar would behave in the Grand Melee. The Krill will attack the strongest opponent to prove their courage. The Gorath will seek honorable combat. The Vexthar will use swarm tactics. All of them are predictable, because they follow tradition instead of adapting. And if they unite against us? Tallis asked. They will not, Claire said with confidence. Their pride will not allow it. They see each other as rivals for dominance. We just need to remind them of that. Tallis considered this. As a diplomat, he recognized the truth in Claire's analysis. Pride and tradition were powerful forces. Very well, the Sheriff will join your alliance. But you must understand, if this fails, our species will lose what little standing we have. It will not fail, Claire said. She tapped her notebook. I have planned for every possibility. The next day, the Grand Melee was announced. The arena transformed into a massive, complex environment combining all previous challenges. There were fortresses to siege, hostile terrain to survive, resources to manage, and combat zones throughout. Multiple objectives existed at different locations. Teams could work alone or form alliances. The challenge would last 5 full days. When the alliance between humanity, the Quilori, the Paxion, and the Sheriff was announced, the warrior races reacted with mockery and contempt. An alliance of weaklings, Zarnoke declared. What can the smallest species accomplish together? They will fall to our might just as easily combined as they would separately. But Claire noticed something in Zarnoke's eyes. Uncertainty. He had underestimated humans before and paid for it. He was not completely confident this time. The Grand Melee began. As Claire predicted, the major warrior races immediately attacked each other. The Krill charged the Gorath forces in a massive display of strength. The Vexthar swarmed toward Krill territory, seeking to overwhelm them with numbers. The Gorath responded with traditional battle formations. The Alliance did something completely different. They avoided the major combatants entirely. Using Quilori sensors, they identified undefended resource points. Using Paxion logistics, they quickly established supply lines. Using Sheriff diplomacy, they opened communication channels between the warring factions, subtly encouraging their conflicts. And using human strategy, they controlled the flow of the entire battle without firing a shot. Days passed. The warrior races exhausted themselves in glorious combat. The Krill and Gorath fought a massive battle over a strategic fortress, both sides taking heavy casualties. The Vexthar lost coordination when their swarm tactics spread them too thin across the enormous arena. Meanwhile, the Alliance quietly secured objective after objective. They used minimal force, maximum efficiency, and perfect coordination. The Quilori's sensors warned them of approaching threats. The Paxion's supply networks kept everyone well equipped. The Sherath's diplomacy prevented the warrior races from noticing the Alliance's growing strength until too late. Jake led the military operations, using guerrilla tactics Claire had planned. They struck quickly at vulnerable points, then disappeared before reinforcements arrived. They created the illusion of being everywhere at once, forcing the warrior races to spread their forces thin. Claire coordinated everything from the Alliance command center, her notebook open in front of her. She tracked every movement, predicted every response, and adjusted strategies in real time. It was like watching a master chess player competing against opponents who only knew how to move their pieces forward aggressively. On the 4th day, Zarnoke finally realized what was happening. He gathered what remained of his Krill forces and turned his attention to the Alliance. The other warrior races, seeing the Krill's new focus, also recognized the threat. The small species had controlled most of the arena's resources, while the warriors fought each other. Zarnoke led a massive assault on the Alliance's central position. It was a desperate, all-out attack, with everything he had left. This was the moment Claire had been preparing for. They are coming, Jake reported as Krill warriors appeared on all sensors. Zarnoke is bringing his entire remaining force. Perfect, Claire said calmly. She opened her notebook to a section marked Final Phase and smiled. Broadcast this on all channels. Jake activated the communication system. Claire's voice reached every species in the arena. But she was not speaking to the Alliance. She was speaking to Zarnoke. Battlemaster Zarnoke, she said clearly. I know you are listening. I have studied your tactics for 5 days. I know you always favor frontal assault. I know you rely on overwhelming force. I know you cannot resist a direct challenge to your honor." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I also know that the Gorath forces are regrouping behind you, and the Vexthar are moving to flank your position. You are so focused on us that you have forgotten about your real rivals." It was a bluff, but it was based on careful observation. Claire knew Zarnok's pride would make him suspicious of other warrior races even now. She knew the Krill's traditional rivalry with the Gorath. She knew Zarnok would not trust anyone at his back during a critical assault. Zarnok hesitated. He checked his sensors and saw that Claire was right. The Gorath were indeed regrouping nearby, and Vexthar forces were in position to strike his flanks. Were they planning to attack him while he fought the Alliance? Or were they simply repositioning? His hesitation cost him precious seconds. In those seconds, the Alliance forces repositioned using routes the Quilori had mapped. When Zarnok finally committed to his attack, the Alliance was no longer where he expected. The Krill assault hit empty positions. Confused and overextended, Zarnok's forces found themselves caught between Alliance defensive positions and the approaching Gorath forces. The Gorath, seeing the Krill in a vulnerable position, could not resist the opportunity for honorable combat. The warrior races turned on each other once more, and the Alliance slipped away. They had won without fighting a major battle. They had used the warrior race's own predictability and pride against them. When the grand melee ended, the results were undeniable. The Alliance had secured the most objectives, maintained the best resource efficiency, suffered the lowest casualties, and demonstrated superior strategic coordination. They had revolutionized the entire concept of the trials. The closing ceremony was held in Zenith Prime's Great Hall. Every species gathered to hear the final rankings and see the distribution of Coalition resources and influence for the next decade. The Coalition elder spoke with grave authority. For generations, the trials have been dominated by physical strength and traditional combat. This year, we have witnessed something unprecedented: victory through cooperation, intelligence, and strategic thinking. The rankings were announced. The human-led alliance claimed the top position. The Krill placed third, the Gorath fourth. The mighty warrior races had been defeated by the species they had called weak. Zarnok stood and approached Claire. The entire hall fell silent, wondering if the battlemaster would challenge the results or demand combat to settle the matter. But Zarnok did something no one expected. He bowed his head slightly to Claire, a gesture of respect in Krill culture. "You asked to see my notebook," Claire said quietly, holding it out to him. Zarnok took the notebook carefully in his massive claws. He turned the pages, seeing detailed observations about his people, his tactics, his culture. Page after page of careful notes, patterns identified, weaknesses documented. This small human had studied the Krill with more thoroughness than Zarnok had ever studied himself. "You knew everything about us," Zarnok said. "Every pattern, every tradition, every choice we would make." "I observed and learned," Claire said. "That is what humans do. We are not the strongest or the fastest. But we adapt, we study, we understand, and we use that understanding to overcome challenges that raw strength cannot solve." Zarnok handed back the notebook. "I have been a warrior for 60 years. I have won countless battles through strength and courage. But you have taught me that true strength includes wisdom. I was wrong to call your people weak. Different strength is still strength." He turned to address the gathered coalition. "I propose that the trials be reformed. Physical prowess should remain important, but strategy, cooperation, and intelligence should be equally valued. The humans have shown us a better way." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. The smaller species who had always struggled in the trials saw new hope. Even some warrior races recognized the wisdom in Zarnok's words. The coalition voted to accept humanity as a full member with complete rights and significant resource allocation. More importantly, they voted to restructure the trials to include strategic challenges alongside combat tests. That evening, Jake found Claire standing at a viewport, looking out at the stars. Her notebook was tucked under her arm as always. "You changed everything," Jake said. "The entire coalition is reforming." "Because of what you did," Claire shook her head. "I just showed them what humans have always known. Intelligence and adaptability matter as much as strength. Maybe more." She opened her notebook to a fresh page. "And this is just the beginning. The coalition has hundreds of species, countless cultures to learn about. There is so much more to observe and understand. You are going to keep filling notebooks," Jake said with a smile. "Always," Claire replied. "Because the day we stop learning is the day we stop growing. Humans survived on Earth not by being predators, but by being the best learners. That is our real strength, and we should never forget it." She wrote a single line on the new page. Lesson confirmed. Knowledge is the ultimate weapon. Understanding defeats force. Wisdom outlasts strength. Across the station, Zarno-K sat in meditation, reviewing everything he had learned. The small human with her primitive notebook had defeated him more thoroughly than any warrior ever had. But instead of shame, he felt something unexpected. Growth. For the first time in decades, Battlemaster Zarno-K picked up a writing instrument and began taking his own notes, documenting his thoughts and observations. If wisdom was truly strength, then even an old warrior could learn new ways. The news spread across the galaxy. Humanity, the newest and physically weakest species in the coalition, had won the trials through intelligence and cooperation. Other species began to see humans not as inferior, but as valuable partners who brought unique strengths to the galactic community. And it all started with one woman, one notebook, and the simple but powerful human ability to observe, learn, and adapt. Claire had proven that when faced with stronger opponents, the smartest response was not to compete on their terms, but to change the rules entirely. The stars shone through the viewport, representing countless worlds and species yet to meet humanity. Claire smiled and kept writing. There was always more to learn, and humans would never stop seeking knowledge. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or physical might, but the reminder that intelligence, curiosity, and the willingness to learn could overcome any challenge. The aliens had called humans weak, but Claire had shown them the truth. Humanity's strength was not in their bodies. It was in their minds, their adaptability, and their endless capacity to turn knowledge into power. And that strength would echo across the stars for generations to come. In his quarters, Zarno-K sat alone with recordings of all 4 challenges. He watched the humans' victories again and again, trying to understand how such weak creatures had achieved so much. His traditional military thinking could not fully grasp it, but he was beginning to see the truth. Strength was not enough. It had never been enough. The humans had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and understanding could defeat raw power. And if that was true, then everything Zarno-K had believed about warfare and strength was incomplete. He looked at his own claws, powerful weapons that had won him dozens of victories. Then he thought about Claire's notebook, a simple collection of paper and ink that had defeated him without ever being raised in anger. For the first time in his life, Battlemaster Zarno-K considered that he might have been wrong about what it meant to be strong. "You already have a plan, don't you?" Jake asked. Claire smiled. "I have 17 different plans. We will choose which one to use based on the specific environment and what the other species attempt. The key is remaining unpredictable, while they remain bound by their traditions and instincts." In his quarters, Zarno-K reviewed recordings of the day's challenge. He watched the human team's patient strategy again and again. His military advisors argued that it was dishonorable, but he could not deny the effectiveness. For the first time in his long career, Zarno-K felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The small human with her primitive notebook had defeated him without ever raising a weapon. She had used his own predictability against him. He thought about all the battles he had won through strength and courage. Those victories still mattered. But now he wondered if there were victories he could have achieved with less cost, if only he had thought differently. The 4th challenge was announced. Hostile environment survival. Each team would be dropped into a dangerous ecosystem with minimal supplies. They had to survive while completing various objectives scattered across the terrain. Time limit: 72 hours. Claire's notebook was already filling with new observations and strategies. The real test was about to begin. "Sleep can wait," she said. "Today we show them that strength is not everything." The third challenge would begin in 2 hours. Jake felt nervous energy building in his chest. They were about to try something completely unprecedented in the trials. It would either prove Claire's theories correct or end in spectacular failure. Claire closed her notebook and stood up. She looked tired but determined. "Remember, Jake, we are not trying to be stronger than them. We are trying to be smarter. That has always been humanity's real advantage." As they walked toward the arena, Jake could hear the aliens already gathering, expecting another easy human defeat. He glanced at Claire's notebook. Tucked under her arm, such a simple thing, just paper and ink. But Claire had turned it into a weapon more powerful than any gun or blade. She had turned it into knowledge. And knowledge was about to change everything. Themselves today. The Krill are overconfident. The Gorath value honor above efficiency. The Vexthar think in predictable patterns because of their hive mind. I am collecting data. And data becomes knowledge. Knowledge becomes power. Jake sat down across from her. "So we outsmart them. We outthink them," Claire corrected. "There is a difference. Tomorrow's challenges will be difficult. We will probably lose the combat trials badly. But I need you to trust me. Every defeat is just more information to learn from." Outside their window, the vast darkness of space stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, Earth waited to hear how its representatives would perform. Jake knew millions of people were counting on them. He looked at Claire's notebook, filled with her careful handwriting. It seemed like such a simple thing, almost laughable compared to the advanced technology of the other species. But as Claire bent over it again, writing by the dim light of the room, Jake felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, that simple notebook would be enough.